1874, the podcast with Dan Bardell and Gregg Evans.
Hello and welcome back to 1874, the podcast. I'm your host, Dan Bardell, joined by the Athletics' Gregg Evans. And today we're mainly going to focus on a massive away win for Villa, 2-1 at Tottenham Hotspur Sunday afternoon, Gregg. And there's one thing that was maybe missing from Villa's CV this season. It was a win away. Well, it was wins away in general, actually, but a win away at one of the traditional Big Six teams. And Villa went there, rode their luck, especially in the first half, but came away with 3 points, Gregg. Massive, massive result. And Villa are really riding high in the Premier League at the moment.
Yeah, huge result. Exactly what they needed. Villa have been brilliant this season. They've been brilliant over the 38 Premier League games that Unai Emery has been in charge of now. I think they've picked up 77 points in those 38 games. So they are a top four team now. You know, that is a top four team form. But yeah, I think just to maybe alert everybody else that Villa are serious about staying where they are. They did need to go to one of these teams, one of these rival clubs, and beat them. And look, we'll get into the performance, as the podcast goes on. But the bottom line is Villa got the job done. They won the game, and that's what they needed.
Yeah, sign of a good team sometimes as well, when you can ride out storms, and you do rise your luck a little bit and you still come away with the result. Manchester United used to win titles, and at times they'd have a run of form where they didn't play particularly well, but they just win games by the odd goal and just continue to keep momentum. And I think that's what Villa did yesterday. They just kept that little bit of momentum. They needed something away from home. They needed a positive result, and they got that win. Before we do move on with the pod, Gregg, just a quick word about our sponsors, NordVPN. We'll hear in more detail about them later on in the show. But if you do want to grab your exclusive NordVPN deal, you can go to 1874.io/NordVPN. And if you do that, you will get a huge discount off the NordVPN plan, and you'll also get 4 months for free. And the good news is it's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. And Gregg and I and everyone associated with the channel, thanks to them for continuing to sponsor this show. So yeah, first half, Gregg, Villa did ride their luck, as I've said a couple of times, a host of chances for Spurs. But I actually thought Postecoglou set Spurs up really well, but he also kind of threw a surprise in there. I don't think Villa would have been prepared for that kind of lineup and that kind of system that they went with Lo Celso and Kulusevski kind of playing as free eights. The fullbacks really had license to get forward. Bryan Hill wide on the left and Brennan Johnson switched over wide to the right. I think that was part of the reason why Villa struggled in the first half, because I don't think they prepared for that Tottenham lineup, because you wouldn't, because there was no body of work to guess that would be what they'd do. And do you think that was a reason why Villa did perhaps struggle in that first half?
I think it was a combination of a few things. I actually think, I take your point, and Villa wouldn't have prepared for that. I mean, it was effectively a team of fullbacks and wingers, wasn't it? For Tottenham, it was such a weird team. I mean, players that we just haven't seen, play very often. To be fair to Lo Celso, a player that Villa were interested in over the summer, I thought he was excellent. Did very well. Faded out in the second half, but started really well. Brennan Johnson caused some problems. Son, he's always a threat for Tottenham, and some of the other players, contributed as and when required. But I think we can say that perhaps Emery got it wrong in the first half. I think it looked like he tried to play a 5-3-2, but it was almost 4-4-2, wasn't it? It was just, they never really got into, the shape just didn't look right. I think they were pulled apart a little bit too often by Tottenham. Perhaps, the surprise element of the players that were on the pitch. But look, there's no denying Tottenham were by far the superior team in the first half. I was worried actually, not so worried about the result, the scoreline, because Villa were still in it, but the amount of chances that they actually conceded, and over the duration of the game, they faced more shots on goal than they have in any other game this season, and that was even more than the defeats to Newcastle and Liverpool. So I think there are a few problems there which Emery recognises. He knows that Villa need to be better against the top teams if they're going to sustain this. And really threaten to stay where they are in the league. But the promising thing and the positive about this Villa side is that they're just always a threat going forward. And I think the longer the game went on, the more in control of the game Villa were. And as soon as they took the lead, I fancied them to ride it out, because I felt like Tottenham had just lost a little bit of their creativity and lost their way a bit, and were just getting frustrated and tried forcing things towards the end.
Yeah, you touched on the setup there at the start. It was the normal 4-4-2, but I think off the ball, perhaps he wanted McGinn and Cash to drop in, like Villa did last season very, very well when they came away from Tottenham Hotspur with 3 points. That right-hand side for Villa, that did cause us problems. It didn't work. I think Konsa never really looked sure about where he was supposed to be at right back, and Cash got run ragged and had a really difficult first half as well. Maybe lucky to stay on the pitch. I felt that side was the side that caused Villa problems. I will say, I called Diego Carlos to play in our preview show. I thought he made some really important last ditch interventions. It was good to see him back in the team again. But I did feel like Konsa just never looked comfortable. When Villa play that high line and they play the offside trap, and Konsa, when he's playing right centre back, he looks like he knows exactly what he's doing. His body language at right back just looked completely different. And as I've just said, Cash also had problems in front of him as well.
Yeah, and I think Dino and Torres, they had issues as well. Tottenham were coming quite strong down that side at times too. I thought Dino was exposed a little bit. But look, collectively they all kind of made amends in the second half. The first half was poor. Villa were very, very lucky not to concede a penalty early on through Diego Carlos. But I think again, as he grew,
did you think that was a pen?
Well, at first, when I was first watching it, I couldn't see it. I thought, that there was the handball, wasn't a potential handball, was there from Konsa, which I thought, that wasn't a penalty. But then it was only when I watched the replays that I could see, well, actually, surprised that VAR haven't had a look at that. Well, it's one that they've missed again. There's something in the Premier League, regardless of the teams who are playing, that we talk about every week that VAR get wrong, and it's very frustrating for, I think, football in general that we still can't get this consistency. Look, great for Villa, they got away with that one. I think, I think it should have been a penalty. Yeah, I think Carlos was quite lucky. He sort of had his elbow around it, kind of headlocked him almost, didn't he, Gil?
Yeah.
But I don't think that they weren't going to get the ball or anything, was he? It wasn't a case of he was stopping him from getting the ball because Villa were able to clear anyway. But I just think you can't do that in the box. So Villa were fortunate with that. I think they were quite fortunate that Tottenham didn't score more than they did in the game. The expected goals, the third highest of expected goals against. Was the third highest of the season, 2.64, I think it was. Already mentioned the most shots faced this season. So, a few worrying issues, a few worrying things for Villa there. But look, the halftime changes gave Villa a lot more control. I think Cash is probably more suited a little bit deeper rather than
starting high.
I think so. I think, look, in certain games it's worked well for him, hasn't it? You look at
Burnley away, he was good there.
Yeah, I think against the lower ranked teams, Dina and Cash are going to get on the ball more often, and they're going to be able to use their attacking qualities. Against tougher teams like that, I think they need more of a compact, narrower formation almost.
Yeah, it was. But look, can't get away from it. Villa were very fortunate not to go more than one down in that first half. Spurs were very good. You got to give them credit. They've got so many players missing as well. You saw the list of absentees that they had. To field the side and have the game that they had, I think is credit to them and credit to Postecoglou, because I think he's got them playing some lovely, lovely football and he's wedded to his style. But I almost think, so you should be. That that's people going about plan Bs and stuff. I don't really massively believe in plan B. Spurs were very unfortunate yesterday. If they've had their shooting boots on, they'd have been out of sight in that first half. I will say there was an element of it, Spurs had a goal or two disallowed in that first half. I will say there's an element of it that's kind of by design with Villa again, with that offside trap and being high up. Like, people look at it as riding their luck, but it's such a military operation that Villa have honed, and Villa have got it really down to a T now. Regularly teams are having goals chalked off against Villa from tight offsides. But Villa really know what they're doing with that, and they're executing it very well. I haven't actually read it yet, but I know Jacob was writing about it in The Athletic, Villa's offside trap. It's a really useful skill and a useful piece of armour that Villa have got in their game. I
mean, it's just brilliant defending. It's just a very, very well organised defensive unit, and it's repetition over and over, working on things to make it work. And if you think back to the Tottenham game last season, I know it was under a different manager, but it was very similar then, wasn't it? I think how many times Son and I think Kane was it at the time we were offside. Yeah. Kane playing that game, I think he did, didn't he? Yeah. I just remember Son being offside so many times in the game.
Yeah.
it was very similar. It's just a tactic. It's just a plan that Villa are brilliant at working at now. And it's, I take your point saying that the managers shouldn't have to change and shouldn't go to a plan B. But Emery's philosophy doesn't change too much, but he does have different tweaks which make Villa at times a little bit tougher to beat, a bit more unpredictable going forward. And look, I really like Postecoglou. I really like what Tottenham are about. I enjoyed actually watching them. I thought they were a good team over the last few weeks, even though they've lost all those 3 games. But perhaps, when they've just got so many injuries, they just might need to just tighten up a little bit. It feels like it's a bit gung-ho at times.
It felt like they tried to curtail Villa, the pace. They were a little bit worried about Villa's pace, hence why Eric Dyer, who is a natural centre-back, didn't play, and it was Emerson Royale and Ben Davies at centre-back, which was maybe a little bit of a surprise. But Villa didn't really get Watkins or Diaby into the game in that first half at all. And eventually Villa conceded that first goal, and it was eerily similar to the Liverpool away game, that goal, the kind of corner bouncing across everyone, and then a midfielder on the edge of the box hitting it well, albeit this time there was a deflection. But that goal was eerily similar to the Liverpool game, wasn't it? Later on in the game, of course, but it was a very similar goal.
Yeah, and look, really disappointing for Martinez. You could see how frustrated he was, because I think he'd have probably saved it, wouldn't he? It was just the deflection that took him out the way, and he almost kind of thought, no, straight away. Obviously, he was disappointed. Not much more Diego Carlos could have done, really. I think he just kind of tried to block it, didn't he? And got very unfortunate. You want your defenders to put their bodies on the line, and that's what he was trying to do. So, yeah, disappointing, but it was coming, wasn't it? You kind of felt that you just knew that was coming. But I thought Villa's reaction was great, and they flew up the other end and almost scored through Watkins. And that's so just a classic, example of how good Villa are now, and how they've always got this threat going forward. It was the same against West Ham, wasn't it? When you think of West Ham had that really intense spell of pressure, and then Watkins went up the other end and scored. There are so many occasions like that now where Villa are a real threat on the break, and that's what makes it so hard for opponents coming up against them now. They can pepper the goal at times, like Tottenham did yesterday, but they've got to always be aware that Liverpool, that Villa are going to have plenty going forward to cause them problems too.
Yeah, it was really unfortunate that, because it was a perfect response, and says a lot about the mentality within this team. Heads didn't drop; they just went down the other end and thought we better start playing here. And lovely ball from Luca Dean, and Watkins. He couldn't be any tighter. It was, I don't know whether you watched it live on TV yesterday, but from the one angle, he looked onside. And from the angle that they drew the lines on, it obviously turned out to be offside. I know they go from not the clearest reference point, but it was quite bizarre to look at it. From the one angle, you thought if they draw lines there, he looks onside. And then from the angle they used, he ended up being offside. But lovely ball in, and really unfortunate, because it was a good header from Watkins as well.
Yeah, and I think it's a little bit different in terms of that isn't Tottenham mastering their defence and keeping Villa, offside. It's a little bit different. We can look at Son's goals that were disallowed, and say that Villa have played, really clever, a specific plan. But with that, it was just a little bit different. The angles that I look back on the replay, one side he looked completely offside, the other side he didn't, and perhaps that explains why it takes a little bit longer to make these decisions, and why supporters inside the stadium are getting even more frustrated now, because they're having to wait 2.5, 3 minutes for a verdict. Because if you look at it from the one angle, it looks offside, and you think, well, we can do that in 10 seconds, he's offside. But then these different angles show up different, views, and yeah, let's not get into VAR. It's too depressing.
Not the time for VAR today. We'll cover that at another point. I'm sure there'll be something again in the next few weeks that we question to do with VAR. But the game's the game. He was offside. They've given it. Fair enough. You move on. I'm not just saying that because we won, but you do just have to move on from it, because there'll be the same kind of thing could happen and go in Villa's favour on another occasion. Crucial goal just before half-time. This really swung the momentum of the game, that Pau Torres goal. Villa weren't at it, hadn't been good at all, had struggled to get forward players into the game. Incidentally, Pau Torres had missed a decent chance to put Villa 1-0 up from a header from a set piece. He found the space nicely, and a little bit unlucky. I think he kind of put it back where it came from, and it was a decent header, but it went just wide. But that ball in from Douglas Luiz, it doesn't get any better than that from a dead ball. That is a ridiculously good ball, because that ball's come a long way to keep the momentum and keep the flight on the ball. It's just an unbelievable set piece from Douglas Luiz. He's actually not an easy header from Pau Torres either. He's finished it really, really well. So bit unjustified, because Tottenham had been by far the better team. But to score a set piece goal just on half time, albeit a really good one, that moment has completely changed the complexion of that game, because I'm sure if Spurs go in 1-0 up, it isn't the same game.
No. Look, a really, really important time for Villa to score. It clearly lifted them. It was great to see Torres, looking so pleased with the goal. He was genuinely delighted, wasn't he? I love to see goal celebrations like that. A really tough header, actually. Yeah, I mean, he sort of curled it all the way back across goal, didn't he? And into that front post. It was a lovely connection and a brilliant ball in from Luiz. I mean, we talked a couple of years ago about Villa needing like a set piece specialist. Remember when Conor Harahan left, and we were thinking, we haven't really got anyone actually who can score consistently from set pieces and put really good deliveries into the box. Douglas Luiz was not signed to be that guy, but he's been transformed into that guy. And what we're seeing now is a variety of assists from various angles, corners, free kicks. He takes penalties, doesn't he? So he is Villa's set piece specialist now, and increasing in value every single week. It was a week of kind of mixed emotions for him, really. Returning to the Brazil national squad, but then obviously having coming off the bench in 2 games that were pretty disappointing for Brazil. They've got a few problems there, haven't they? They're struggling to get results at the moment, and I think 6th in the World Cup qualifying, which will just about squeeze them into the World Cup. I'm sure they'll get in, but clearly results aren't going as good as they should. But for Luiz, I mean, he's just he's riding a wave of emotion at the moment. I think he's doing really well for Villa, scoring and assisting regularly. It's good to hear Emery say after the game that he thinks he's happy at the club, and let's not try talking about interest from elsewhere.
Nah, there's no way Luiz is going this window coming up. Absolutely.
Well, look, Arsenal aren't going to spend 70, 80 million pound on another midfielder, are they? And they've just spent 100 on Declan Rice. And I mean, look, I'm just
70 on Havertz or whatever it was.
I'm plucking that figure out of thin air, but he's probably worth that, isn't he?
He's arguably worth more at the moment. I honestly don't see a weakness to his game at all. I think maybe he's been a little bit more understated in the last few games, but sometimes when you don't notice him, it just shows that he's doing his job. Him and Kamara in the middle of the park, that they are a high level partnership. They could go down as one of the best central midfield partnerships that's ever been seen at Villa Park. I honestly think they're that good. Those two, they're both really high level footballers that kind of in and around the France and the Brazil setups. This is how good they are. And then at the other end as well, you've got the best goalkeeper in the world. Absolutely no doubt about that. We'll come on to him shortly. And I think Villa have also got the perfect striker in Ollie Watkins. So a really, really good place this club is in at the moment, and riding high in the league as well. Villa made some changes at half time, Greg. So I'm not sure whether Diaby was injured. I haven't read anything, or whether it was tactical. You might know better than me, but it was Diaby, and rightly so, Cash that went off in the second half of, to appear in the second half. Cash was going to get sent off. I think the Tottenham fans were giving him
on to.
So let's go back. Oh shit, I've knocked my mic over. Let's go back a little bit. Actually, I forgot to cover that Cash booking. Tottenham fans are very, very upset about it. I understand why they're upset, because they've just got a really good footballer back in Bentancur, and he had a massive foothold in the game. I've got to say, he was having a very good time in the middle of the park with the 2 3/8s in front of him. Cash has made a frustrated challenge. It's not a great tackle. I don't think it's anywhere near being a red card. I think it's a yellow card challenge all day. I don't think it's malice. I think it's just mistimed and a little bit late, and the ref dealt with it and giving him a yellow card. But the unfortunate thing is Bentancur's just come back from a really bad injury, and he's gone off again. So Spurs fans are going to be really upset by that. But I did think taking him off at half time was the right call, because I did think he was going to get sent off. Matty Cash, I felt like Villa were going to get a second yellow from somewhere, just with the hostile crowd. They were getting annoyed, and the ref maybe sometimes bow down to pressure. It did feel like taking him off on a yellow. I mean, there was other players on a yellow for Villa as well. I felt like that was the right thing to do. But that 12th man, Leon Bailey, coming on again, and Tillemans came on and had a really good game as well. tweeted last night that a few years ago, Villa's only sub that they ever made was either El Ghazi for Trezeguet or Trezeguet for El Ghazi. There was no other sub. Now they're bringing on Leon Bailey, who is in really good form at the moment, and Yuri Tillemans, who I've always really, really rated. Bringing on players like that just puts Villa in such a good position, because Spurs, with all their injuries, they didn't have those kind of high-level options off the bench, really.
No, and I mean, a lot to digest there, Dan.
Sorry, I rambled on.
Let's go. Let's start with Cash and Bentancur. I think, look, a little bit of a late challenge. Not reckless. He's not that type of player. He plays a little bit on the edge, but he's not wild and reckless.
It's unfortunate as well that he injured Doherty, didn't he, a few years ago at Villa Park, and Spurs fans have remembered that.
Do you think they did, or do you think they've remembered? I thought it was 100%. More. Okay. I thought it was more because they were so frustrated at losing Bentancur.
I think it was
again. On the back of all the injuries that they've got, and it was kind of like, look, let's get on the back of this player who's done this to us. So, but yeah, Villa were a little bit loose in that first half. I think Kamara, McGinn, maybe Konsa as well got bookings. Was it all three of those? No, McGinn and Kamara definitely.
Definitely did, and it was Cash. I'm not sure there was another one in the first half.
Yeah, maybe Konsa, but correct me if I'm wrong later. But if the first thing I thought, when we were at about 40, 42 minutes was, I bet two of those or one of those three will be taken off at half time, and Cash felt like maybe the more obvious one out of the three, just because the fans were onto him. It felt like the system wasn't totally right. And I kind of thought that Villa need to take off one of the central defenders or one of the fullbacks and push one of the central defenders. Either way, if they're going to do that. So it didn't surprise me that Cash came off. I thought Bailey was good. I thought he was much better than Diaby. Diaby had a quiet game. Couldn't really get on the ball. Couldn't stretch to the defence. Didn't really link up with Watkins at all. And I thought there was a big difference when Bailey come on. So, it wouldn't be a surprise to see him perhaps start the next Premier League game at Bournemouth, depending on what they do at
I really don't think he will. I think they've got him down as this guy's the guy to come on and change a game.
Your impact sub,
every week.
Yeah, I know, but he starts Europa League games, doesn't he?
Yeah, but I actually think Bailey's enjoying being that 12th man. Not quite often players want to play, and I get that. But Bailey seems to be reveling just in running at tired legs because he's fresher. It seems to just be working really well. So I don't know. Really, I don't think Emery should change it in the Premier League because that is something that is working.
Look, if you're a player and you're getting half a game, you're half happy, aren't you? It's not like a late substitution where you're only getting 10, 15 minutes to have a go at defenders, but you're getting a full half. So you're feeling included, but there's always, you want that little bit more. You want to be the starter, really, the main man. And Bailey, he's a guy who needs to play with a bit of confidence. He's got that bit of an ego like wingers and all good forwards have. You need that arrogance almost. And he's got a little bit of that back this season. I thought his handling of the ball was excellent yesterday. I thought he passed and moved the ball well. He held the ball up well at times. He stretched the defence and carried the ball well when he needed to. He's always looking to score, isn't he? He's going to shoot a little bit more often than Diaby. You can see that, in his game. He wants to be the headline hugger almost. But look, I think those changes at half-time changed the game for Villa. Tillemans coming on gave them a bit more control in midfield, and Bailey offered more than Diaby going forward.
1874 is proudly sponsored by NordVPN, so when the Villa are playing and you can't watch it, we want to help you. NordVPN is a secure and private service which works on pretty much any device, including your laptop, mobile and your smart television. So if you want to watch some live content, it allows you to appear like you're in another country. And whilst you're connected, no one else can find out what you're doing, including your internet service provider. Beyond this, the service also has threat protection baked in to protect you from intrusive website ads and malware, which is pretty handy for you. As part of NordVPN supporting 1874, they have given us an exclusive deal of up to 65% off and 4 months for free. This also includes Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. All you've got to do is go to 1874.io/NordVPN and sign up. All the details are also in the description. Also, this November, NordVPN are also promoting Movember, which is a charity based in the UK which raises money to help fight mental health, suicide, prostate cancer and testicular cancer. All are amazing causes, and NordVPN has added a donation feature to their checkout which enables new users to donate £1, £5 or £10 or whatever the customer decides to donate. And even better, NordVPN will match every donation. As always, we're very grateful to anyone that signs up. We know that money is tight, but if you think NordVPN will help you out, it will also help keep the channel running and help us too. Do you think, I've talked about Bailey enjoying being the 12th man. I don't think Yuri Tillemans is the kind of character that enjoys being someone that's coming on. I think he wants to start games. Was he perhaps unfortunate to miss out after how good he was last time out?
Yeah, a little bit. That was the main surprise, really, in the starting lineup, wasn't it? I didn't. I thought he would play. I thought Villa would go more rigid 4-4-2, but they tried something a little bit different. And yeah, look, he come off the bench and did well, didn't he? He gave Villa more control in the midfield. Just passed the ball nicely. Was always an out ball, and he helped to sort of like stretch those tired Tottenham legs, I thought.
Yeah, ball for the goal as well. Assist.
Yeah.
So he's making an impact in terms of, goal contributions now, Tillemans as well, getting assists when he's coming on. I think that might be his third. Although his one didn't count really, did it? Because it ended up being an own goal. But, it was another assist off the bench for him. He got one against Crystal Palace as well. That's what he's good at, isn't he? Working the ball and finding the angle to make a pass that maybe other people don't see. And he's put it through to Watkins, and Watkins has finished it with absolute aplomb.
Yeah, lovely finish. Watched him in his game for England, and didn't really do much in the game. Didn't do much for Villa yesterday, but just showed that elite level finishing when he needed to. Very very similar in some ways actually to Haaland on the Saturday game. Didn't touch the ball very often, but when he needed to, he really did. He really did the business, and that's what you want from Watkins. He's going to do that now. He's going to miss a few chances. The strikers that miss the most chances in the Premier League are Haaland, Watkins and Núñez. They're going to miss chances because they get so many. But, Watkins sticks so many away, and he's so important to Villa. And again, he showed it yesterday.
I still think he's absolutely perfect for Villa. He's always going to have a few detractors because of, like you say, the missed chances. But I think that just shows a complete lack of understanding, because you've just explained it perfectly. He misses chances because he gets more chances than most forwards get. He's so good, and he has scored the winner now or important goals in so many games for Villa over the last 3 years. In particular, since Emery's come in this last year, Douglas Luiz has been Villa's best player under Emery. I don't dispute that, but Watkins is not far off. And his goal output now is just staggering. He's going to go on and be Villa's record Premier League striker in terms of goals now that he's signed that new contract. He's so good, and he's just perfect for Villa, and he's perfect for Emery. I won't accept any criticism of Ollie. I think he's brilliant.
Yeah, to be fair, Dan, I think you said maybe a year ago, didn't you, that Watkins could go on and become Villa's all-time record goal scorer in the Premier League, and I wasn't so sure about that because I didn't think he would get enough goals in each season to get there, and be at Villa long enough. But
I don't think I actually said it around this time last year. I think the drum I was banging constantly, even before Emery came in under Gerrard, was that people think there's this mythical striker that Villa can go and get, that's this number 9 that's going to get 20, 25 goals. And I said that striker's not there. Villa have got the perfect striker. We're just not playing very well under Gerrard. Watkins had a good start to the season under Gerrard in terms of all-round game. He just wasn't getting the chances. We've given him the chances under Emery. Emery's refined his game, and he's worked with Emery's coaches and has kept himself more central and just worked on little things within his game. And I've just always thought, there isn't this better striker out there. I will die on that hill. There is not a better striker out there for Villa than Ollie Watkins. I think he's tremendous.
Yeah, and he's off penalties as well now, isn't he? So his goals are all coming from open play, which is perhaps even more impressive, because you look at a lot of strikers over the years and they top up their numbers through penalties. Watkins isn't going to be taking penalties for Villa no more. So he's getting into really good positions still. He can score with both feet. You see those lovely one-touch shoot finishes. Decent in the air as well, hasn't he? Scored a fair few goals with his head. So yeah, really important player, and I think you're right. Villa are going to find it really, really hard to get a better striker in than him. It's good to see Duran come off the bench, and
lovely slider,
Jacob Ramsey as well. Another real positive from the game. And I think if you just look, you mentioned it at the start, Dan. You look through Villa's bench now, And even when you go through the top teams, I mean, Man City, for example, Man
Yeah,
City have got a much better starting team than Villa. Let's be honest, okay? They're higher value, better quality. But look through the bench, and they didn't have many options to turn to on Saturday.
no.
In what was their biggest game of the season. So,
They
okay,
even make a sub. I don't think they made a sub, did they?
no, I don't think
And
they
that
did.
and that happened. That happens a lot. They don't make subs.
Yeah, and okay, a couple of injuries still. Kevin De Bruyne, the main one, of course. But you look across the squad, and Man United's strength isn't that deep. Tottenham have got lots of injuries at the moment. Okay, Liverpool are very strong. Newcastle have got lots of injuries. There's an argument to say that Villa are one of the best equipped teams, at the moment in terms of resources and options. To bring Tielemans, Bailey, Ramsey, and perhaps to a lesser extent Duran off the bench, it's pretty strong, isn't it?
And Moreno was sat on there as well, wasn't he? He was back on the bench as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just think the club's in such a healthy and such a good place. And Brenda Mings have been out for the entirety of the season. Ramsey and Moreno have been out for the entirety of the season, just making their way back now. And that's the other thing about Watkins. I don't want to curse him, and I need to desperately. I'd touch the wood on my desk because I've cursed Mings before the Newcastle game, and he ended up getting injured. But yeah, how durable is he as well? He plays every Premier League game. I know he got taken off yesterday, but usually plays 90 minutes as well. And I think of Everton, who've got a good striker in Calvert-Lewin, but really, really struggles with injuries. There was another one that popped. Isak and Wilson quite often get injured, don't they? Watkins is worth his weight in goal for Villa for so many reasons. He's just unbelievable. I can't speak highly enough of Ollie Watkins as a forward player for Villa. I can't.
No, and there's a lot more that we could go into. His willingness to work hard, his tactical flexibility. He's played different roles for different managers, and and still performed really well. His dedication to always want to improve. He doesn't cause any problems around the place.
Nice guy as well.
There's so much going for him.
Yeah.
So Villa have got a top class striker on their hands.
Yeah, we haven't spoke since the international break. I felt sorry for him in the England game because those two games were absolutely tedious, and it's almost like he's not done himself any favours in some ways in that game. But no one did really in either match. It wasn't like England played well at all. He was just on the periphery of the game. But I think whoever had been playing up top might have been on the periphery of the game. Kane came on and kind of forced an own goal from a corner, but both those two games, the November international break, it was pretty tedious because England had qualified and it just felt like no one wanted to get hurt. And people will say, "Oh, is he good enough to be the backup to Kane?" Yeah, they're different types of players, yes, but absolutely, he's good enough to be that second striker for England.
Absolutely, that second striker has changed a fair bit over the years, hasn't it? Calvert-Lewin was the guy at one point who was getting closer. Wilson obviously went to the World Cup ahead of Watkins. I think Watkins is the guy now. I hope he's done enough in training. I hope Gareth Southgate likes him enough to put him in that squad for the next Euros, because I think he deserves it. I think he's worked his socks off. He's proven for Villa are a higher ranked team now, but he's proven for a relatively low to middle ranking team in previous years that he can go and score goals. When the service hasn't been as good. So I think in an England team he'll score lots of goals. It's just whether he gets those opportunities, isn't it? Because Kane's always going to play in tournaments.
I think Tony's his biggest threat when he comes back because I think he does more of the stuff that Kane does. Perhaps if you wanted to have a more like-for-like replacement, I think Tony probably gives you that more so than Watkins. So when he comes back, I think he's probably his biggest competition, I would say, to get in that Euro squad. Kind of covered the Spurs game. Actually, great 3 points, as we've said, really big win for Villa. Just whilst we're on the talking about internationals, we've covered Luiz, we've covered Watkins. Ezri Konsa while he was away for England, Gregg. On Armus, look, I'm going to get slated here. I like Southgate. He does a lot of things that I don't like, but generally I think he's done a really good job for England. And people say England have done well in spite of him. I disagree with that completely. Although he does do a lot of things that frustrate me. I thought his treatment of Konsa on international duty was quite bizarre for him to be the only outfielder that didn't even get a minute on the pitch. I thought that was really, really strange and a bit tough to take in some ways for Konsa, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think. Look, I haven't spoken to Konsa or people close to him, so I don't know the full feeling of how that international break went for him. I think it would have been one of mixed emotions. He would have been really happy to be in the squad. I thought he handled himself well when he was in the press conference. He was asked lots of questions about how much he wanted to be here, etc., and how long he'd had to wait. And I think he handled himself really well. I would have liked to have seen him play, purely because I've followed his journey for a fair few years now, and I think he deserved minutes in those games. To be the only person that didn't play would probably be going through your head a little bit. Why couldn't I just got on? He would have been desperate to have made his international debut, because look, football, things can change in football so quickly. I'm hoping this doesn't jinx him in any way, but an injury can come. The Dunk might get called back into the next squad ahead of him, because look, he was called up because he pulled out, wasn't it?
I'm not having Dunk over Konsa at all.
Neither am I. But look, if Southgate likes him, then there's nothing we can do, is there? So, things can change very quickly in football, and that just might have been his one opportunity to play for England. He might never get the chance again. Let's fingers crossed we're not being too dramatic here, and he does, but it would have just been a little bit disappointing for him. He would have been really pleased to get in the squad, but disappointed not to feature. So, yeah, shame really.
Yeah, I watched Dunk. I've watched a fair bit of Brighton this season. When Mings was suffering because he was almost doing too much. Even though I still loved him to bits and wax lyrical about him, that was something that was levelled at him. And I think, Emery simplified his game when he was playing. When I watch Bryson, I feel that with Lewis Dunk. Just doing too much, going into areas he doesn't need to get involved in. He obviously got sent off at the weekends. Well, Konsa is an infinitely better defender than Lewis Dunk, in my opinion. He's younger. They've probably got similar amount of Premier League games, I'm going to imagine. Konsa's come through the age groups as well, which is something Southgate usually really, really likes. I can't understand why you wouldn't even give him like 20, 30 minutes. Also, you could lose him to another country still. As well, I don't think you will, but you could lose him to another country. Dunk's been given chances here and there for England. At the moment, I think he's England's fourth centre-half. Southgate seems to like that fourth centre-half to be someone who's experienced, a bit like Conor Cody was the fourth centre-half for a number of years, even though he didn't really ever play. It feels like Dunk's kind of taken over that position. Konsa suited to international football.
I think so, and he's going to be really up against it for the Euros. I mean, look, that's got to be on
won't make it.
Everyone's mind now with 6-7 months out is, am I going to make the Euro squad? And the fact that it's a 23-man squad when he,
is that definite now?
Well, I think it is, isn't it? Yeah, I think it's 23. I have to double check, but previously they've been 26, haven't they?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm pretty sure it is, because Southgate spoke about it after the game, and he said, look, what I'll have to do is think much deeper about who I bring in, whether players can play various positions. So he's going to be looking for versatile players, and to an extent, Konsa can do that. He can play right back, he can play centre back in a 2 or in a 3. But I just think with the options that England have got, it's going to be quite a tough one for him to get in, isn't it?
Yeah, Gay is definitely the third choice. Tamori's ahead of him, and it appears Dunk's ahead of him as well. And Maguire and Stones are gimmies.
And then you look at Walker could potentially place. He could look at Walker as a centre back if they really need it. They're going to need really experienced, versatile players who have been in tournaments before, and yeah, it might just be a tough one for him. But look, it's another tick on his another box ticked for him in his career. And look, his form for Villa's sensational, so I'm sure he'll be fine.
I know it won't be. But it does always feel personal with Villa and Southgate. Jack had to wait so long to get call-ups, and then even when he did get the call-ups, he wouldn't start, and then he joined Man City. He didn't have the best first season, but suddenly was starting games for England. It always feels like there's that little bit of a vendetta from Southgate against Villa players, and Mings got took out and took ages to get back in.
Watkins a bit harshly missed out, didn't he, at times?
Yeah, it just always feels like there's a little bit of a vendetta against Villa for Southgate.
I know. Yeah, I mean, look, there definitely is. There definitely isn't. But I think groups of supporters often feel that way, don't they? You ask any group of supporters, and they'll say, "Oh, we gave it away in the last minute. It's typical Tottenham, or typical Chelsea, or it's typical Bristol Rovers." Every group of supporters say the same. But yeah, I think Villa as a team, Southgate might have looked at them previously and thought, well, as I say, they were a low to middle ranking team. So can those players, have those players got the big game experience to go and do it in a tournament that really matters? And you can then look at perhaps reasons why they go more towards Man City and Chelsea and Liverpool and Man United back then, when they were used to going into European games and winning titles, etc. But look, there's no excuse now. If a Villa player is performing well and look, we said at the start of the season, start of the podcast, over 38 games, Villa have won 24 of those games, and they've picked up 77 points. They're a top 4 team now.
Yeah, so with that in mind, then I did put a tweet out before the show asking where people think Villa are going to finish. If we put you on the spot, Greg, now, if you had to predict where Villa are going to finish this season, I know you won't like doing this at all. It's not your bag.
Yeah, I don't like predictions like this. It's too early into the season for me, and it's like I really need to see more. I was quite concerned by the way that Tottenham played through Villa with a makeshift side, and I think if they play like that against Arsenal and Man City, albeit it's at home, so it's a different environment anyway, I do think they'll get punished. I'm struggling to say an exact position. I still think Man City, Liverpool, and Arsenal will finish above them, and then I think Villa will finish 4th, 5th, or 6th.
I said 5th at the start of the season, and now I'm going to stand by that. I'm going to stick with that prediction. Actually, made a few bets with Chelsea fans from Sky Sports News that Villa would finish ahead of Chelsea. So at the moment, I'm on for a bit of money from a couple of days.
Yeah, that feels quite safe, doesn't it? The worrying.
They were almost laughing at me for making a bet at the start of the season. I couldn't understand why they thought it was so ridiculous and that they took the bet.
Newcastle are still a concern for me, for Villa, I think, because if they go out the Champions League, well, look, they might still have European football. I think the unpredictable nature of Newcastle's season now is they don't know whether they're going to be playing in the Champions League, the Europa League, or nowhere at all, or nowhere at all. Did a thumb up just come up on your screen? That must be something on my high-tech laptop that I certainly don't know what this technology is.
Look at that in the pod.
Should we try it again, see if another one comes up?
I want to do it. I really enjoyed that, Greg. The thumbs up while you were talking. Did you put your thumb up at that point?
I put my thumb up, yeah. The camera. I don't know what happened, but it's knocked me out my stride here. But yeah, I think the main concern for Villa at Newcastle, I think, Man United's form is an obvious concern, but I just don't think they're quite as good. And Tottenham, a bit ropey, aren't they, with the injuries? So yeah, it's going to be exciting. I think it's going to be a really exciting title race. It's hard to predict who's going to win the league. I don't think Villa are in that race just yet. But ask me after the Arsenal and Man City game, and we might have a different opinion.
Yeah, I mean, myself and Sam Toll covered it last week. Covered the fixtures that are coming up on this channel. Go back and watch that video if you haven't watched it already. But it's they're two really exciting games. Those two next two home league games at Villa Park. I absolutely cannot wait for them. Got 44 replies to my tweet about where do we think Villa are going to finish from people that I assume listen to the pod. So I'll just rattle through a few of them. TK says, I think 3rd, win the next 3, then we win the league. I'm not sure how much of that tweet is serious. George Smiley says, we're going to get beaten badly away by good teams, but my word, can we match good to medium teams? The progress from a few years ago is quite insane. Sean Kawalenko says 4th, Liverpool, City and Arsenal be top 3, then 4th between Villa, Spurs, Newcastle and Man U. And Villa have the best manager of the 4 teams and have the best squad, in my opinion. That's probably
I think that's a really sensible prediction and accurate. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, it fits in similarly with what you were saying, but obviously adds the manager thing as well. I would agree with that. I think outside of Pep and Klopp, Villa have the best manager in the Premier League. It's almost fact. There's a few tweets going around about Emery being the. I think I can't remember, completely forgotten the journalist's name. He tweeted about there's no doubt Emery is the manager of 2023. He's absolutely correct. It's the only correct answer. I don't think there's anyone else up there in 2023.
Eddie Howe's done well, hasn't he? To be fair.
Yeah. But they had a good 2022, which obviously helped them going into 2023. Villa had a bad 2022, somehow qualified for Europe, and then somehow have just turned into this team that's is he with 2 points off the top now, Greg? Going into December, 2 points off the top, and watching the Man City Liverpool game being a draw and thinking, that's a good result for Villa.
I was thinking the same. It's quite interesting as well, isn't it? Sort of the opinion of the more national and global sort of audience, and you listen to some of the commentators after the Man City and Liverpool draw, and they say, "Oh, Arsenal and Tottenham will be really happy with that." And I'm kind of thinking,
that really irritated me.
If you're saying Tottenham, Villa are in exactly the same boat, if not more now.
Yeah, so, Horrible commentary. Come on, be better than that. Craig Fenema, I'm not sure I pronounced his name right here, says, depends how we strengthen in January, as our schedule will need a bit more depth. And if I don't really know that bit, and if they hit the ground running. But a team with confidence and belief is dangerous. I liked straight after the whistle had gone, you saw Ollie mouth into the crowd, 2 points off the top. I can't say I saw that myself, actually. I've been saying about January, I really don't see Villa doing anything. I don't know how much you know about the transfer plans, but I just can't say that Villa are going to do anything in January, because they didn't really in last January other than Moreno. I just think, knowing that they might be potentially Champions League next season and how hard January is, I don't think Villa will do anything, because they might think in the summer we can use that money to get a really high level player if we are in the Europa League or we are in the Champions League. And also, we've spoke about squad depth. I don't really think Villa need to do anything at the moment. I think they're pretty well covered.
No, and look, me and Jacob are writing about FFP this week. So, with Everton's 10-point deduction, we haven't done a podcast since that, have we? So, the rest of the league, are very alert and aware of FFP now. So, if Villa can have a January where they perhaps bring a bit of money back into the club and don't have to spend too much, then I think that will be looked upon favourably and certainly good for the accounts, because Villa have spent a lot of money over the years now. They've brought a fair bit in over the summer with some of the academy graduates moving on. But we'll go into a lot more detail about this, in the Athletic this week, I think. But yeah, I don't see any real areas of weakness. The Zaniolo still there, isn't he? And Longley hasn't really been needed much. The two loan players. So if Villa want to, maybe another attacking option, if they can get somebody in on loan, that might give them another edge if they're still in the Europa Conference League and perhaps still in the FA Cup or however you want to look at it, or still pushing for the top four. They might just need maybe one more creative spark. But yeah, I don't see the real need. I think they've got a very strong squad now with plenty of players to turn to.
No, I was out on Friday night and talking to someone about Grealish and FFP, actually, and Villa hadn't have sold Grealish for 100 million, What with Villa getting deducted?
Villa hadn't sold the stadium back to their owners. Yeah, they'd have been deducted. So, they've had a couple of close calls. They sold the stadium, which got them up basically back to the owners. Clever but within the rules procedure. And then Grealish, 100 million, Chukwuemeka, 20 million. Those were big sales, really. And I know that going into this summer, Villa were looking at perhaps having to move on a top player for a substantial amount of money. In the end, they got quite creative with it and were able to sell Archer, Philogene, Aaron Ramsey, and Keenan Davis. All for pure profit, and got rid of Coutinho. But they did move a fair few on, if you think of it, and bring a fair bit of money in. So they've got to keep doing that. But there's absolutely no panic at the moment. There's no need for Suarez and Edens to have to sell a big player to fit in with the rules or to break up this Villa team. They want to build this team. They want to continue building. But sales are inevitable. They will happen, and that's what happens at all clubs now.
Yeah, I'm wary of talking about FFP with you, because the last time we did this, it didn't go down well at all. But I will say what you said that day turned out to be completely correct. So I don't think anyone can argue with it. And the way we've just spoken about it now is fact. But I honestly, I'm not even saying it's just FFP based, because I don't think it is. I just don't think Villa will buy anyone in January. I really don't think so. Sometimes when you buy someone as well, it disrupts the squad. I think sometimes you're doing more harm than good bringing in a new signing in January, when you've kind of got that togetherness and everything's going well. And Villa's best 11 best 10 is usually set in stone, isn't it? I think that will be 9. When Moreno's fit, I think him and Dean will rotate a little bit more. But sometimes bringing in someone else disrupts the apple cart and upsets the apple cart. And I just don't think Villa will do it. I really don't think we'll be active in January at all. And to be honest, every time I've gone on Sky Sports News for the transfer windows, never been able to speak about Villa, because we never do anything. We've done all our business early last time, so I didn't get to speak about us in the summer either. But yeah, I just don't envisage a busy January either way, outgoings or incoming. I think Villa are better off keeping as is.
I don't think so. I think history always shows that Suarez and Edens are willing to put the money in the pocket if they need to. If they need to be flexible. Remember when Wesley and Tom Heaton got injured, didn't they? The 1 year, McGinn got injured just before one of the 1 year. So they're always willing to, be flexible. But I think Villa will be planning now for the long term and looking at the summer and looking at options of who they can bring in. Nico Williams, a player that they've looked at, will be out of contract in the summer. Could he be a potential good freebie? Somebody who's worth, a significant amount of money. But if he doesn't extend his contract at Bilbao, then
Bilbao the Clown.
That's you or Rocky in the background, Rocky Balboa. If he doesn't extend his contract to Bilbao, then he might be an option that they go back in for. So we'll see. But yeah, I expect a relatively quiet January. But look, there are lots of games coming up, so things can happen. Got to hope that Villa have a clean bill of health up through December and into Christmas.
I'm wary about how we've ended this podcast because people don't like FFP and they love transfers. And we've literally just talked about FFP and then said Villa won't buy anyone. So, yeah,
we're not clickbait over here, are we?
We'll just upset everyone.
We talk the truth.
Yeah. But talking of clickbait and journalists and whatnot, Greg, have you got a press box archive for us this week?
Oh yeah, I suppose we have. We didn't really mention John McGinn much, did we, this week? So
playing with a poorly bum, wasn't he? He took a few digs to the bottom. He said after the game.
No, I just think it's just a little bit of a good time to maybe celebrate John McGinn. I think, as a journalist, when you get offered interviews or where you request interviews, there aren't that many sort of interesting footballers about anymore. But when you get John McGinn, you know that you're always going to have a good time with him and he's going to do a good interview. And I just think back to that day where he signed for Villa, and we were in the old media room as it was at Bodymoor Heath, and I remember asking him the question, "What do you think? What's your role? What's your role going to be at the club?" And he said, "To give the ball to Jack Grealish." And I just thought, that was quite an interesting answer. And then, sort of as the interviews went on, he's always good for a sort of funny and quirky line, and there just aren't many footballers like that. And I think we often see the players that are interviewed after games, and it's quite monotonous and quite boring, isn't it? I scored, but it was good to get the 3 points. Very much like that. But McGinn is very different. And a couple of other quotes I remember was he did an interview with the Times, and he said it was again about he's talking with Jack Grealish, and he said he's they're very different people. Looks wise, they were a little bit different, but combined they were a 12 out of 20. And I thought that was a classic John McGinn line. And then there was one final one last season when Villa beat Newcastle 3-0, and Callum Wilson had said previously going into the game that the way that they were going to stop the on-fire Villa was to send the fire brigade. And me and my colleague, Matt Mayer from the Express and Star, we spoke to John McGinn after the game, and we said, well, what did you make of Callum Wilson's comments? And he said, honestly, I didn't hear them, but like the rest of the emergency services at the moment, the fire brigade must be on strike. And it was brilliant, just a brilliant quote, because at that time it was when the NHS were all on strike. So yeah, long live John McGinn, and
yeah,
lots more times of him. He's great value.
He's grown into a leader as well. I've noticed a few bits of subtle leadership recently, and in the post-match interview on Sky yesterday, he kind of went out of his way to reference Yuri Tillemans, which I thought that was a real captain's thing to do, the way, because that wasn't the question he was asked at all, but he kind of just moved it back around and made sure he mentioned Tillemans, which says to me maybe he was upset not to be starting, but make sure as captain I mention him that he did help turn that game. And I've noticed a few little subtle things he's done like that. When he's talking, I didn't think McGinn should have been my captain when he was under Gerrard. I was quite annoyed with the way it happened actually with Tyrone Mings at that time. There's no doubt now he's a superb captain, John McGinn. He's really grown into the role, and he's on top of his game as well. And like you say, long live John McGinn, because he's a massive part of this football club, and it's nice to see someone that's been there so long and given so much to the cause and was part of the team that ultimately got Villa back into the Premier League. It's great to see him still there, great to see him captain, and great to see him thriving, because he's so unique and he's always good to listen to as well. So yeah, I really enjoy those little bits of subtle leadership that he's thrown in recent weeks as well. He's really grown into a superb captain, and long may it continue. Right then, Greg, let's go. Thank you very much to you for joining me as always. Always a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you to NordVPN for continuing to sponsor the pod with Greg and myself. It really does help the channel, so thanks very much to them. Try and do a preview show ahead of Europe on Thursday. I'll get on the phone to Greg's colleague Jacob, but he likes to do the European pods. We'll get him on, and I'll have a chat with him before Thursday, I suspect. Nothing else to cover really. Hopefully everyone's enjoyed it. Thanks for the interactions on social media, telling me where you think Villa will finish. Obviously, I read out a few. We'll continue to try and involve the audience as much as possible in this show because Greg and I enjoy the interactions and we really enjoy doing the show. Have a good evening. I think by the time this podcast comes out, most of your evening will be over. But yeah, have a great one.